Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's intermission time.
Simon, I don't know what you do in July, but some people tend to celebrate that little thing called Christmas in July.
Yeah,
Okay, it's that idea that waiting 12 months for Christmas to come around is just too long. And look, I think that Christmas in July is just a bit silly. Like, whatever. I mean, if you want to do it, fine. I'm not going to yuck your yum, but, it's not for me. But if you want to celebrate Festivus every 6 months, I'm absolutely there for it. Because here's the thing. Festivus, the fake holiday created by one family and adapted into that Seinfeld episode, Festivus is about one thing which I actually hold really dearly to me spiritually, and that's an airing of grievances.
I get the point now. I see where we're at. You came to me with this intermission, and grievances was central to it. And I made the point that I'm kind of chill. I've got a really centered, Zen-filled outlook on the world, and finding things to get cranky about is hard. But when I focused in, I realized there are at least 5 things that I do want to get off my chest, grievances that I want to air. So this could be a good intermission for us both. I know you love creating controversy and airing your grievances in a manner that generally gets me rolled up, and I know some of the listeners. But let's see where we're going with this.
Oh, Simon, I'm an angry man. An angry man.
I know it. Are we going to go 1 and 1?
We'll go 1 and 1. So each of us have created a list of 5 grievances. I've actually got 35 on my list here, but I've paired it back to 5.
You sent me a PDF with all of them on it.
In politeness to Simon, he did actually read through my list of grievances, but I got a text to him where he's like, dude, I've been reading this for 3 days now. I'm on page 2064. Okay,
I need to sleep.
That's exactly it. I haven't got time to get past this first third and keep on going before the podcast.
We should point out that these are grievances. Well, I'm assuming these are grievances specifically to do with the film or TV screen watching that we talk about on this podcast. We're not just sort of throwing things we hate about society out there, are we? Because that could really go long.
No, that'll be a very special podcast for Patreon supporters.
All right, kick us off. What's your first one?
Okay, my very first one. Look, part of this is going to be me whinging about other people's whinges. Okay, it's just kind of where I'm at right now. I'm putting it out there. Superhero fatigue is not real. Okay, there's fatigue around the lazy and tonally off Marvel films, the Marvel product that we've seen. I think people have got a big issue with Marvel, but they keep on lumping Marvel films in with this greater sort of idea that superhero fatigue is real. But the reality is that there's still plenty of superhero films that have been released over the last 18 months to 2 years that have performed remarkably well and people have been very supportive of. We've had the animated Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse film from almost a year ago now. People love that movie. If you throw another Tom Holland Spider-Man film up on the big screen, people are going to go into that. It's going to make $1 billion plus. There is going to be no fatigue in getting along to see a Spider-Man movie. Throw another Batman movie out there. Sorry, The Batman movie out there. And it's going to do close to $1 billion again, like the last film did. Like, there is definitely space for superhero films to exist. It's just that people see, here's another one of 3 Marvel films that are going to come out this year. All of them are a little bit creatively bankrupt, and therefore all superhero films are a bit crap. And then the only alternative to that from the last 18 months, really, has been the Sony Marvel movies, which are just bad movies generally. You and I, we didn't mind Madam Web. I think we were stronger supporters of it than most people. But even so, still not really a great movie, and I can understand why people might have been disappointed seeing that at the cinema. My contention is, people aren't tired of superhero movies, they're just tired of superhero films that are just doing the same old boring shtick.
Excellent point. My first one is, and I'll frame this as a quote, I never listen to critics. They just want to hate everything. Here's why that's a grievance.
Sorry, is that a quote from me?
No, it's not. It's just I hear it from people in passing, and I just want to reference on behalf of my critical brethren, we're doing what we're doing because we want to love everything, that we find a magic and a charm and a life-affirming positivity about going to the movies, where it's like the classic sort of heroin addiction. Nothing's as great as that first hit, and everything after that, you're just trying to recapture that first hit. And that's kind of why we become critics, because we love going to the movies. I walk into every film I watch with 5 stars there for it to take. And as I start to see it unravel and realize it's lacking a bit of this, or it could have used a bit of that, or I remember when it was done better here, or whatever, that's when it loses some stars. But we're not doing what we're doing because we want to hate everything. We're doing what we're doing because we love it, and that's why you should maybe listen to critics sometimes. The other answer to that, and alternatively, who are you going to listen to? Do you think what the marketing people of Disney or Paramount or Sony Pictures are putting on their posters are the things to believe and listen to? Try to listen to someone like us critics who don't have a dog in the fight, who just want to give an opinion, and then decide what you want to watch or if you want to go and see it. But maybe don't take on board what the highly paid, deeply motivated by capitalistic gain marketing departments are telling you. Listen to the standalone critics. My number
So
one.
I'm going to come at your criticism from a slightly
No?
different standpoint, not just
All
from a
right.
different perspective, which is that just generally in life, I'll hear people tell me, "Oh, Dan, you're just too critical about things," and that can be applied to movies and TV shows, or to just people at Coles who just really bother me. But my question to these people who are like, "Oh, you're too critical." My question is, why are you not critical enough?
That's
Okay.
exactly my point.
There are so many shitty things that we're bombarded with on a regular basis, whether that's movies and TV shows. Like 99% of everything is crap. Okay. Like, why aren't you calling out the things that aren't good, but also just celebrating the things that are really good? So, more often than not, you're probably going to say, this really wasn't very good, because most things aren't very good. But
exactly right.
to get to the sweet, you must get through to the sour. So,
Nice.
let's just
Well
embrace
said.
it.
I'm liking this segment so far. What's your next one?
Okay, I'm going to mix up my list a little bit here, but I'm going to go for one of my big grievances ever since I watched the show called The Gilmore Girls. But The Gilmore Girls is not the only one who's guilty of this by a long shot. But weightless coffee cups. Simon, enough of this. Here's the thing. So I think people know what I'm talking about here, but this is when you're watching a TV show, and The Gilmore Girls was always guilty of this because they had cups of coffee in their hands all the time on that show. But the thing is that you've got actors who want to gesticulate with their hands, they want to have physical movements because they want to bring that all to a performance. But what they often don't think about is that they are holding what is a coffee cup that supposedly is filled with coffee, and that has some weight to it. But you just see like coffee cups just going around everywhere. It's very frustrating.
I could not agree more with you, Dan Barrett. Or actors carrying cups of tea, if it's a British film, on saucers and walking around like there's nothing in there at all. You look, you have you're right. I'll put money with that one.
And look, it carries over to other things like, someone's going to pick up some luggage, and then you just see them picking up, and it's just kind of a bit too easy. And we all know that everybody, when you reach at least a certain age, when you pick up any bag of any size, it could be a small little bag of lollies, it could be a big bit of luggage, everyone still goes, ugh. People in movies don't do that. Okay, so you've got that. The argument from a production standpoint is, you can't fill it with water because that provides a hazard. Like if it spills, actors could slip over. Obviously can't have hot coffee on set. Like that's a concern as well. But my thing is, like, it doesn't actually need to be a liquid. Just put a weight into the cups. Clearly, actors can't act and pretend at the same time, because otherwise that cup would not be moving around the place. Like, that's obviously a problem for people. Just put some weights into it. It doesn't need to be see-through. It rarely is.
I am loving this segment. So far, it's good. I wish I'd thought of stuff like that, because I spent a lot of time trying to come up with some sort of, capital I issues to do with film and television. So forgive me for being a little bit serious about this, but I totally agree with what you said then. The next one I'm going to say, and this comes from a very privileged point of view, because you and I get to go to preview screenings and have for many years now, seeing films ahead of their release date. But I want to talk about the unprofessional and increasingly unprofessional behavior of some critics, some young critics who don't understand what a privilege that is, but certainly the influencers that are asked to these preview screenings. Over the last 10 years or so, influencers have become a valuable marketing tool for for movie companies releasing their movies.
A valuable tool. They're the only valuable tool. You've got no value in there anymore, Simon.
The point I want to make is these influencers come for the photos, come to have their pictures taken and hashtag the big movie star of the moment on their Instagram or their TikTok pages, and then
Mm.
sit in the film posting with their phones on to these said platforms, and very often leave before the film has even finished. Now, I know to the marketing departments and the publicity teams, they don't care. They don't care if they get up and leave or if they're posting during the movies. But for an old school reviewer like me, who was around when 7 reviewers would come to a preview screening at a theaterette in Uptown Sydney, to see the privilege that we have to go to preview screenings being abused like this just sort of rubs me the wrong way. So that's my second one. I know that's a little bit specific in its tone and in its motivations, but that's where I'm at.
Simon, just look, I don't want to be the person who defends influencers, but I'm going to do that right here.
Uh-huh.
Part of what they've actually been brought there to do is to do exactly that, to take their photos, to, essentially capture what they can from the moment and report that, for want of a better phrase, through
Right.
their various channels. Like, essentially,
Right.
isn't the problem then that publicists are courting these people, but maybe not necessarily providing a venue for people that are there for other purposes?
Boom. That's exactly what I was about to say. Have your influencer screening where you have all the flashing lights and the photo ops. But for us, 10 or 15 critics who actually do this for some kind of a living, and I say living advisedly, but who do this, just have a little session for us at 10 o'clock in the morning up in your theaterette, and we'd happily go to that. But even at those sessions, you're still getting the young, FM radio show producers texting back to the office to say, yeah, I'm just here at the movie. The phones go on, which I think is incredibly rude for a professional to do in those situations. I'm going to rant further. Please, you're number 3.
I mean, I would also say, Simon, and this is just one of these, this is the terrible state of the industry and where everything's at right now. If it wasn't for those influencers, I think there'd be less movie screenings around the place.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
You're probably right.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't want to have to, bring that into the reality here, but I think that might just be how it really is. Okay. My third grievance. This is a narrative that I see online all the time, and it's just not true. It's this idea that streaming services should release all their shows weekly, and they shouldn't be doing binge releases as you see the likes of Netflix doing. It's this idea that every TV show is better served by being released once a week so that everyone can get online and talk about those programs with their mates and then, all sit around and enjoy the next episode when it drops and repeat and rinse. The thing is, that may work well for shows which are big water cooler moment shows, but the reality is most TV shows aren't that. Most of them are just shows which just exist. There's no reason that it necessarily needs to be artificially paced out week to week so that 3 people online can talk about it. That doesn't necessarily like improve the quality of the experience of watching that program. Ripley, which I just discussed then, this is a show that all that episodes dropped on day 1. I watched the first 2 episodes last night. I'm going to watch every episode of that, probably 1 episode a night for the next week. At no point was I ever going to get online to talk about Ripley. At no point do most people get online to talk about the TV shows that they're watching. Very rarely do they talk to people at work about all the shows they've been watching. Occasionally a show comes along that people want to talk about, but it's just not that common. Let people watch things at the pace they want. And I think what I'm really trying to say is Law and Order wasn't on last week, and it really pisses me off. And the only reason it wasn't on is because it was an Easter weekend. But if every episode of Law and Order was produced through the year and all released on the same one day, I would have seen my Law and Order story. God damn it! Sorry, Simon. Next grievance.
I get it. No, I hear you. I hear your pain.
No. Okay. Here's the thing. This is what I'm really sort of saying with it, which is that there is a type, and this is generational change and people sort of forgetting stuff over years. But we've now had like almost a year of Netflix, a decade of Netflix in our lives. I mean, it has been in our lives for some of us, but in Australia, 2015, I think, was the official launch for it. But we'll say it's been a decade of original series being dropped in binge formats onto Netflix. Within that decade, people have forgotten about how we used to watch TV shows, which was all weekly, and they'd always be interrupted for, either time to catch up on production, for various holidays, for scheduling issues, whatever the case may be. TV shows were treated really, really shabbily. We all got excited when things were being dropped on day one because people stayed up for like that night to watch all of House of Cards. They were excited to be able to do that. They were excited to be able to pace it out over a couple of days. It's why through the 2000s we were all binge watching DVD dramas. We were watching The Wire. We were watching The Sopranos. We were watching Arrested Development. Nobody was watching it weekly on Fox. They were watching it when it was on DVD and could be enjoyed like one after another, and just people just gorging on it. It was a really fun way of watching TV, and we've forgotten about that because all the shows do that now. So people are like, oh, it should be the ways of old. No, the ways of old actually kind of sucked. How about we just let people be in control of their own TV viewership?
Number 3 for me, and I'm going to sort of make a declaration here. The death of long form paid film criticism. Now, don't all switch off. I just want to make.
Sorry, what?
Over the last 2 weeks, I have quit my 2 other long term film critic positions with ABC Local, the statewide ABC FM channel, radio station, and with Nine Media, which was the 2GB, 4BC, 6PR, 3AW, which was a national slot for me. I wanted $30 an episode. They said no.
$30, a whole whopping $30, Simon.
A whole $30 an episode, which when I took holidays off for the year, came to about $1,500 for the whole year. This was after being with the companies for, when it was 2UE and then 2GB and then Nine Media. I've been with them off and on for 30 years. The content I was providing was then also used as a podcast. I would do Christmas. I would do pre-records around Oscar time, stuff like that. Give me $30 a week, and they said no, so I said screw you. So what you're hearing here on Screen Watching and what I'm writing on Screen Space is the only critical outlet for my voice now as a film critic, which I'm very happy with, and I'm excited for that to be the case.
For full disclosure, I actually pay Simon $30 for the year.
That's exactly right, which I'm very grateful for. I bought a new cup this week. The fact is, there are really only maybe 6 or 7 paid film critics working full-time around Australia, and they are of the like of the Strattons, Jason DeRossi on Radio National, and a couple of others that you would know by name. But there isn't an outlet for long-form paid film criticism, which then also adds to the echo chamber effect of something like Rotten Tomatoes, where film critics can just turn up, say a few words, get a splat or get a fresh tomato, and they become part of this sort of collective critical mass that doesn't really have any value at all other than to the people at Rotten Tomatoes. So try and support your film critics, radio producers, and magazine editors. Please pay for it. If we're on your station, if we're on your magazine, you think we have value to your output, so pay us for that.
Yeah, so look, I mean, there's a couple of things with this. I mean, first of all, there is a declining value that people are seeing in critical opinion for not just films, but obviously TV, other screen culture, games, extends as far as like book reviews and that kind of thing.
Sure.
Like, there's generally a less of a belief that there's like interest in that. But at the same time, the counterpoint is, let's not even think about it necessarily as film critics need to be paid more, but let's take it as a broader media question, which is, why is a commercial radio network like Nine Radio not paying its regular contributors? Now, as someone who has done a lot of radio spots over the last, 15 years or whatever it's been that I've been doing that for, I generally sort of approach things from 2 ways, which is that if it's the ABC, I'm not really expecting to be paid. It's public media, okay, and they don't really have the budgets for that sort of thing, and that's fine. I've been a regular contributor on ABC Radio for many years across multiple TV shows, both national and state-based. There have been a couple of ABC spots that I've done over the years which were paid, which was incredible. I never really necessarily asked for that, but they were paid opportunities. and it meant that I was able to actually devote more time and consideration to those opportunities. However, I have also done some work for what's now Nine Radio, and they weren't paid roles. And after a while, I felt really just used and abused. I certainly didn't put in the number of years that you did, Simon. But also, look, I mean, I'll talk about one of the regular ones I've done recently in the not too distant past. I was regularly contributing to Spencer Howson's Sunday morning TV program, radio program, doing a spot about TV. In that time, that wasn't a paid role, but I was largely doing it because I've been on very good terms with Spencer for years and years now, and part of it was kind of fun doing that and whatever. But it sort of reached a point where I thought, you know what, I don't feel that my time is necessarily being valued, not necessarily by Spencer, but certainly by the radio network. And I just said to him, hey, look, unless this becomes a paid opportunity, I just don't think it's really something I can keep on doing. And we brought it to an end. And real talk, radio appearances have done nothing for me professionally. So if I appear on podcasts around the place, Simon, I suddenly see like a number of people find me from that and subscribe to my newsletter. I'll appear on national radio, national television around the place, and there'll be nothing from that bump. With the exception, Simon, of Radio National have a radio program, which is also a very successful podcast called Stop Everything. I think I've got my Benjamin Law podcast confused, maybe. Whatever Benjamin Law's podcast is on radio through Radio National, where they talk about screen culture. It's usually him and Beverly Wang, but she wasn't on the week that I was on. I did an appearance there, went for like about 45 minutes to chat, and I picked up a couple of hundred subscribers off the back of that. It was really a surprising thing because I've done years of radio where you just get no impact from it, and the reason for that,
and they use that against you. That they'll say the big radio stations will say, "Oh, come on, we mention your podcast every week. We're bringing all these people to you." No, you're not. You're not at all. There's no value in that at all. I've not seen any bump in that, and clearly you're using my content to fill your shows and to fill your digital channels. There's, my segment was cut out and released as a podcast every week, and I'm still not seeing any bump from that. So don't piss in my pocket and tell me it's raining.
Yeah, and look, to explain why you don't see an uplift from radio or TV, it's because of the experience of how you're consuming this media. So if you're listening to radio, it's probably because you're driving your car and you're traveling around the place and you're listening to it, okay? Or you've just got it in the background and you're not really an active listener. You've just kind of got it while you're, reading or doing the dishes or whatever. Generally, people don't have a phone in their hand. So the actual act of remembering that person you were listening to and then going to a phone and then finding them on Google, subscribing to whatever they do, like those are several points of friction which just stop people from actively doing it. Exactly. I mean, anyone listening right now, think of the number of times you've ever done that. Like, it's rare.
Yeah, absolutely true. All right, let's wrap up this intermission. What do we got to go? 2 to go? 1 to go or 2 to go?
I've got 2 to go here. I'm going to quickly knock these out. Yep. Okay. I'm going to complain about Star Trek fans and continuity. Star Trek Discovery returns this week. There have been so many old-time Star Trek fans who are like, oh, but, they're saying they're doing this, but back in Star Trek, the original series in Season 2, Episode 14, they actually proved that you can't do that. And so, therefore, why are we seeing this a couple of 100,000 years in the future? Okay, here's the thing. Star Trek as a TV series, as a shared universe, from the original series onwards, has had many, 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 many episodes where characters time travel. Okay? People change the past all the time. Continuity in Star Trek can't exist. We've seen in Star Trek all these characters traveling back in time and changing the past, which then has impacts on the future, except we're only just seeing these people. This is an entire galaxy of people. People are probably time traveling all the time. We're just not seeing it on Star Trek shows. You can't look at continuity in Star Trek and expect there to actually be continuity because the episode you saw is quite different because someone's clearly changed time since then. Simon.
Wow. Okay. We are going to get in. I'm going to very quickly talk about fake festivals. Now, you know that in another life, I am a festival director of the Science Fiction Film Festival, which is occasionally in Brisbane, sometimes in Melbourne, mostly in Sydney. We are currently fighting with the submission platform called Film Freeway, where the filmmakers from all around the world take their films. We want Film Freeway to try to monitor the fake festivals that are turning up. Fake festivals are the endeavours who ask for year-round submission. There's never a deadline. They offer laurels for filmmakers just for submitting. You instantly get an official selection laurel for your fake festival. So very often, student filmmakers or people starting out in the business will submit to these festivals to get some laurels. They promise an event at some point where they will break down the monthly winners, which they give out. So basically, you'll have a festival that offers maybe 20 or 30 categories, everything from best feature, best new media, best animation, best kit, all the way down, and often with sort of second and third prizes as well, where you get a laurel. And at the end of the year, they'll claim to have some function, but not necessarily have it. And they are soaking up films from all around the world, poor young filmmakers who are being shafted by these festivals for no great benefit whatsoever. You're essentially paying 20 or 30 bucks to get some laurels. And a lot of festivals like my own won't take on board films that have premiered at these fake festivals in the country. So it's doing the filmmakers no good. It's doing the festival sector a great deal of damage in terms of credibility, and it's taking out of circulation films that would have otherwise have had maybe a much bigger and better chance of finding eyeballs. So one for the film community out there, filmmakers, writers, directors, be very careful about the festivals you submit to and do a lot of homework before you hand your money over.
Yeah. Okay, Simon, I know I said 5, but I'm going to quickly do 6, but I'm doing 2 very short ones.
All right, quick, go.
I've got in my notes here, this one or this one, but I'm doing them both.
Right.
The best cinema in Brisbane is the Angelica Cinema. It's the what's the branded cinema from New York. I think I've got a few other in the US, but Australia has its own Angelica Cinema, and there's one in Brisbane. It's really good. It's probably my favorite of the cinemas around Brisbane. Like every other cinema, you can pay like, $15 or $20, whatever it is, to join their film club. With that, you get discounts to movies and candy bar stuff and whatever. On the basis of that, that's fine. That actually, if you see like 5 or 6 films throughout the year, you get your money back. And, often if you've gone and gotten, some stuff at the candy bar as well, that's, you make your cash back pretty quickly. That's all cool. But they give you points for every movie you go and see. But at no point on the website or anywhere in their marketing material do they say what the points are for. What are these points for, Angelica? Are you going to give me a movie ticket at some point? How do I even claim this ticket? It is confusing. I don't get it. The other thing, Simon, is, and I may have rallied about this on the podcast before, but I'm doing it again. Gold class cinemas. Yes. Fuck gold class cinemas. I do not care for them. I don't want to go to a cinema which has I don't want to pay $50 to go and see a movie which has a smaller screen, a chair that hasn't been looked after in quite a number of years, okay, and to have my movie interrupted every 15 minutes by some fat guy 3 seats down who wants his nachos delivered to him. I don't want that. Just let me sit in a decent cinema seat, which thankfully the Angelica has that, but gold class cinemas, thumbs down to you, into the bin with you.
Totally get it. I think Gold Class came around, it was first launched when maybe home video was kind of taking off, and they were trying to sort of make the film going experience something unique and different and challenging. But it's like watching a movie in a cafe. People are taking out dirty plates and bringing in meals, and suddenly the whole cinema's filled with the smell of Cheese Whiz nachos, and I'm just not into it. So yeah, good call, well played, get your act together exhibition, be smarter about it. And I think that brings us to the end of the intermission. I had a 5th one, and it just says willful ignorance. And I can't remember what that was relating to, but I think that sort of can be applied across all aspects of society. So willful ignorance is my last one. There we go, the intermission segment.
That was about me.
It may have been about you. Now, come to think of it, it's coming back to me now, yes, but yeah. Take of that what you will, listeners.